Slanos world, welcome to Hooked on Brittonics. I am Moricata Alcomarcos, known by many names, known on Twitter as Tom Vidothan. I'm your host. This is episode 5. Today we're going to be covering Lenition, which is, and really just specifically the Lenition of S. I know you probably have no idea what that means. It's really confusing. I don't get a lot of these hip grammatical terms. I just barely learned some of them. But we're going to go over it today. We're going to find out what it means. We're first going to start off with, every episode starts off with a Tota Octunun, which means tribe of the week, where we cover a Brittonic tribe, ancient Brittonic tribe. And the episode ends with Dewosh Octunun, where we cover a ancient Brittonic god. That's God of the week. So today, start with our Tota Octunun, tribe of the week. These are randomly picked by a friend of mine. I don't pick these. So the tribe of the week is the Belgae. The Belgae were actually, so there was a people in basically what is modern day Belgium. That's where the word Belgium comes from. There's a people there, it used to be called Belgica, and there's a people there called the Belgae who were Celtic, but they're also kind of like quasi-Germanic. So they're Celts with German influence. They had some German influence on them. And these Belgae, they were great warriors. Julius Caesar fought them, and he had quite a time trying to take them over and trying to win against them. And a lot of them colonized southeastern England. So a lot of the Celtic of what is now southeastern England, southeastern Britain. So a lot of the Celtic tribes there were actually of Belgic descent or partially Belgic. But there was a tribe in Britain, in southern Britain, that was just called Belgae. They hadn't changed their name, because a lot of these other, Belgic tribes in Britain, they had different names. They were, the Cassi and the Atrebates and the Cantiaki, but this tribe they still kept the name Belgae. So they were a relatively powerful tribe, not too important in the course of things. I think most of their story and history gets taken by that of some of their neighbors, like the Atrebates. It does seem like they had an important trade. They're an important trading center, so that's probably why they were taken over by the Atrebates. The Atrebates were their neighbor, and the Atrebates were, of course, big-time rivals with the Catavellauni. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So there was I don't know if waffles, not to be stereotypical, but I don't know how their waffles were. I don't know how Belgae waffles were compared to modern Belgian waffles. A lot of the archaeological finds have not, as of yet, detected any remains of ancient Celtic waffle making. But that's pretty much all we really know about the Belgae. It's kind of, they didn't like change. These guys, they're like, no, we're keeping our name. We're not making a new one. That's pretty much it. And then with that, we can now get into the business of the day, which is lenition in Brittonic. Lenition. So lenition is the softening over time of certain consonant sounds. So what that means is, basically in a nutshell, so the P's, D's, and G's of Proto-Celtic, or excuse me, that's reversed. The P's, it was P's, T's, and C's softened over time to B's, D's, and G's respectively. So like Maposh, the word for sun, became, and that was M-A-P-O-S, Maposh. That became Mab, M-A-B in Welsh. Kata, which was the Brittonic word for cat, C-A-T-T-A. That eventually over time became, or in Proto-Celtic it was C-A-T-T-A. That eventually over time became like Gath in modern Welsh or Cornish. And then you have words, what's another good example? Well, things like Taran, like thunder. Taranish could become Daran over time in modern Welsh or Cornish or Breton. So the main lenition I want to cover is S. So most of the time, most S sounds in Proto-Celtic over time into Brittonic and then into Welsh. From Proto-Celtic to Welsh, words where there was an S originally in Proto-Celtic, by the time of Welsh had become an H sound. So like, for example, Proto-Celtic, the word for old is senos, which the sen part over time eventually turned into hen in modern Welsh. Now, with Brittonic, in this reconstructed Brittonic that we cover, we're kind of covering like an in-between time. So the link between Proto-Celtic and Welsh, or Cornish and Breton, the modern languages. Now, obviously, so those other sounds I covered, so P to B, those are already kind of similar already. P, B, those sounds, they can easily go that way. Same thing with C to G and with T to D. Now, for S to turn into H, I like sat down and thought about that for a long while. I was like, well, how did that it's hard to go from that link from sa to ha. So to me, I kind of thought that there'd have to be this in-between sound, like S would have to break down to sa, sha, ha, ha. So see how so in the reconstruction I've done with others, we have this in-between sound in Brittonic represented, we call it the she, and it's the S with a little upside down accent over it, like a seen as Serbian, and it makes a similar sound. It's almost the same sound as the SH in English, like as in the word fish or she. It's a little more, it's a little breathy. It's technically called a, wait for it, voiceless post-alveolar fricative. Voiceless post-alveolar. Actually, but this is a voiced post-alveolar fricative. What that means, that's just a really overly fancy way of saying sh. I like to just do the sound itself, sh. So we'll cover that word. The word I covered earlier, the word for old. In Proto-Celtic, it was senos, which in Brittonic then became shenos, shenosh, and then in modern Welsh, hen. So you have senos becoming shenosh, becoming hen. Shen, sen, shen, hen. Hear that? Sen, shen, hen. So that's a lenition for any of you guys wondering, because I don't think there's been any other reconstruction done where it shows this. They either represent it, they usually just represent it as a regular old S, or there's one where it's represented as an H. That is the Britannica on LinguaFX. However, though, my thoughts were that, well, the sound had to have evolved at some point. I don't think it just went overnight from senos, sen, to hen. That doesn't make sense. So if you really try and break it down, think about how over time people saying it a certain way, it eventually morphs. Our language, English, that we're speaking right now, or that you're listening to right now, that does that over time too. So it doesn't just change overnight. It's not like one night everyone was running around saying senos, 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 and then all of a sudden hen, hen. No, it was over time. It's like a spectrum. So there you go. That's lenition. Now, we're going to end today with the Dewosh Octunun. The Dewosh Octunun is the god of the week. This, again, is randomly picked by a friend of mine. So the god of the week is actually, it's not a Dewosh, not a god, it's a Dewa, goddess, and it is the goddess Braciaca. Several inscriptions to her were found in what is now Derby, England. Her name basically means the goddess of goddess of malt. Comes from the Indo-European and Proto-Celtic root word brachus, which means malt. So basically, she is a goddess of malt and beer and intoxication. I think of her as hosting a sort of, speaking of that, I think of her as, don't tell anybody, I think of her as hosting a sort of feast of the gods where she serves her divine need, and it brings everybody together. You know what I mean? You know, when it can bring strangers from worlds apart. Imagine you're in a new country and you sit down and you go to a local pub and you sit down with some people and you guys drink together. You guys may never know each other, but it can bring you together like nobody before. And that's the gift. That's the blessing of Braciaca. So, yep. Malar swoosh, everybody. Malar swoosh Eloish. That means thank you very much. Malar, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Booked on Brittonics. Bant Braciaca cantasrus. May Braciaca be with you, and may your God or your creator or whoever you believe in be with you. You guys have a great day. Malar swoosh Eloish.